All right, this is Miss Durbin back with you, trying to get you some more farm chores. I escaped my house to my sister-in-law's house where she has all sorts of goats. And these aren't just any goats, these are Nigerian dwarf goats. She has about 40 of them at any given time out here in adult form. And then right now is kidding season, so we even have some baby goats inside the barn. Right here are two of their livestock guardian dogs. These two are just about a year old. They are both Great Pyrenees. And you know how I am with my dogs, so I just wanted to introduce you to the critters here on the farm before we showed you some of the chores. All right, so you guys know how I love my checklist, and right here inside the barn they have two checklists of all of the chores that need to be done each day. Well, let's be real. That's a goat, you're right. It's not all of the chores, but most of the chores that need to be done each day. All right, we've got one mama goat up on the stand, and this is what they call a milking stand. The goats come in the door and they go up their little ramp and they stand up here and they get a little scoop of this food in their bowl and they eat it. And we have a toddler here who's trying to help, and sometimes they just feed them and sometimes they milk them depending on what time of the year it is. This one here is pregnant, and when is she due? Do you think?
In a month.
She's due in a month, so she's an awful wide little goat to still have another month to go.
Yeah.
There are probably about a dozen stalls very similar to this where there is lots of straw on the ground, and they have the feeders on the wall, and they have the water buckets, and depending on the time of the year you might have more or less of the goats staying here in the stall, and each day after the goats have stayed in here it needs to be cleaned out. So they'll take a rake and they'll take a shovel and they'll clean it out and get out all the droppings that the goats left behind. Here is a secret magic door that they can open to let goats in from the back pasture. Sorry, I'm trying to get it open for you. And you can see all the goats out here. I think these, okay, I don't really know which ones these are, but there's a whole bunch of goats out here, and whenever it gets cold and windy, or whenever it's time for bed, or if they have to work on it, they just open this back door. This is most people's favorite part of the barn. They've got the baby goats. Right now they just have the 4 that are over here, and maybe later we will bottle feed them. You can see that you have to spread the straw out nice and evenly so that it stays warm. These are on concrete floors, and as you might know, concrete tends to get colder, and baby goats need to make sure that they stay warm because they're super little yet. These little goats have taken a lot of extra work today. You see the mama goat here under her heat lamp, and there are 2 little baby goats laying underneath it, and both of the babies are perfectly fine. They were just born super early. They were born about 10 or 11 days early, and in goat terms, that's awful early. So they came out super tiny, and they had to have their little red jackets on to keep them nice and warm, and mama's been nudging at them, trying to get them to wake up and move around a little bit, but there's baby goats that just arrived today. Here in the baby goat pen, you've got some grain and some water for the mama, because the babies will be drinking the milk from the mama. You don't need to give them food or anything, but you need to make sure that mama is taken care of. So every day you have to make sure you give them food and water, and you have to make sure that you clean out the stall so that it's nice and clean and stays clean for them. Over here you can see some of the tools that they use to keep the barn nice and clean. There are all sorts of pitchforks and rakes to keep the ground nice and neat, and also weed eaters for around the fences. The goats do a really good job of eating down everything on the inside of the fences, but sometimes you gotta do a little bit of trimming. And then we've got, of course, all sorts of buckets everywhere for packing food and water. And you guys know how Durbin is about her dogs, so I'm going to introduce you to these livestock guardian dogs. You remember how I said that our chickens are fairly safe on our farm because our dog Annie doesn't let anything come and hurt them? Well, these goats are super duper expensive goats because they are national champion goats and like worth a lot of money, and so they've put in a bunch of guardian dogs. You met 2 earlier in the video, and those are the pups. And over here we have Ellie Elliot, our little white our white Great Pyrenees, and you have Andy over here. He is a Anatolian Shepherd, and these two have their own special section of the farm over here where they patrol, and you'll hear them barking all hours of the night. They think of the goats just as one of their pack, kind of like our dog thinks of the chickens as one of her pack at home. So they protect them and they keep anything away that might try to hurt them. And they might look big and scary, but both of these guys are big old babies. You can see that like any other pet, you got to make sure each day that the dogs have food and they have water, and they even have a big water pump or a well or a water pump, there we go, right here near the barn, so that they can easily get water for all of the goats as well as for their dogs. And I don't know if you can see, but this is something important to a lot of farmers. This is a heated water bucket. There's a cord that comes off of it that you can plug into a power source, so that if it gets really cold outside, you don't have to worry about the dog's water freezing. So one of the big chores out here, in addition to feeding all of the goats, would be making sure that your dogs are all fed. Is this your favorite part of the job, Mark?
Oh yes, it's my favorite part. I had to hold them up here because the others attacked me.
Yeah?
That's why I had to hold them. See them? Look at them. Yeah. See? Now if I sit down like this, he won't leave her alone, see? Look at him.
Aww.
Trying to get the milk. We usually use the bucket.
Yeah.
But we don't have really enough to get the bucket out right now. Once we get about 8 or 10 in here, we'll bring the bucket out. It's got 6 nipples on it.
Alright, so here is a goat that needs to be milked. And one of the first things you need to do is you want to make sure you get the udder all nice and clean so that you don't get any bacteria or yucky stuff in your milk. And what they are milking out, you could actually drink like right now, right? Mm-hmm. It would be warm, but you could actually drink it right now. So, right now, how many do you have to milk? 5. At peak season, how many will you be milking? 40. 40 goats at one time. But they don't do all 40 of them by hand. They started to, or they did once upon a time, but now they've got this super fancy little milking machine that's missing some pieces, but it goes right here. The super fancy milking machine that can milk goats dry in just a few minutes. So it's actually really therapeutic, and if you ever have the opportunity to milk a goat, or a cow, I guess. I've never milked a cow, but if you ever have the opportunity, you should probably take advantage of it. It's kind of cool. You gonna do it?
Are you hungry?
We're gonna take the baby.
Hey, that's your baby.
And we're gonna put her with the mama. Oh, look at that. Now it looks really weird. You see how she head-butted her like that? Baby goats, and I bet cows do that. Mm-hmm. They will headbutt it like that so that they can get the milk down there so they can drink it, and makes it more available for them. So by letting the baby drink off the mama, that means that they don't have to feed the baby quite as much by the bottle, and it cuts down on their workload. So it's kind of a genius idea. And it's adorable.